Israel is not happy about the Trump-Iran Memorandum of Understanding. The financial kill switch for Israel's traditional strategic role, shifting the region from a US-Israel-centric forever war model to a China-GCC-Iran investment regime built around oil, LNG, reconstruction contracts, and a $300 billion regional fund. Israel has continued to strike Lebanon and announces that it will continue to destroy and control Lebanon and will not comply to President Trump deal. Benjamin Netanyahu has told President Trump that Israel is not bound by the deal requiring it to end its war in Lebanon and believes a final agreement will not happen. US intelligence warns that Israel will undermine the Iran peace deal. Israeli media, owned by Miriam Adelson, has accused President Trump of betraying Israel and undermining Western interests. In response, Iran has suspended its delegation's planned trip to Switzerland for the first round of US-Iran negotiations following Israel's bombing of Lebanon. Iran has shut down the Strait of Hormuz and has indefinitely suspended negotiations with the United States following Israel's strikes in Lebanon. The Iran deal is the worst possible outcome for Israel because it removes Iran as the perpetual existential threat that has justified decades of US-funded militarization and regional war. Once sanctions relief is tied to implementation of the MOU, the logic of permanent resistance and endless war gives way to a long-term capital deployment, oil flows, LNG exports, and large-scale rebuild contracts administered by China and GCC states with some bribe participation from Western capital. The widely reported $300 billion reparations package is better understood as an investment fund than as classic reparations. The capital pool likely blends Chinese, Gulf, and Western financial industrial interests, and the precise allocation of who rebuilds which assets across Iran, Israel, Lebanon, Gaza, and Gulf bases. The war was a deliberate destroy and rebuild operation, where what is blown up is chosen precisely because it is slated for privatized reconstruction under the new regime. The deal is to transition the region away from a US-backed military forever war model toward a multipolar investment order anchored by China and the GCC. Sanctions relief for Iran, the re-entry of 2.4 million barrels per day of Iranian oil, and the monetization of Iran's large LNG reserves all become bargaining chips in a new structure where energy, tolls on strategic choke points, and reconstruction flows may be priced in dollars, yuan, or even Bitcoin. In this framework, the IRGC must remain intact as the domestic enforcement arm of the new order. While internal opponents are neutralized and the narrative of resistance to the bitter end is maintained for domestic legitimacy, removing the perpetual nuclear and existential threat narrative would fundamentally transform Israel's role. Without a boogeyman, Israel's justification as the regional frontline outpost erodes. This opens the way for a long-term process where Israel is increasingly privatized, its assets sold off, and its political structure eventually folds into a security and economic architecture. For this to happen, Netanyahu will most likely be removed from power. According to geopolitical expert Simon Dixon, this entire process has been wrapped in layered narratives designed for different audiences. MAGA base voters who see Trump as playing 5D chess, anti-Zionist critics who think divorcing from Israel restores American virtue, another for Gulf monarchies in Beijing, who are formalizing their energy corridors and reconstruction rights, and the more technocratic layer in the MOU and funds architecture that describes who actually owns what. Transnational capital uses these narratives to obscure a coordinated asset stripping and regime transition project. The layered psychological operation here is basically about running different scripts for different audiences at the same time, so everyone thinks they're winning, while the same capital project quietly moves forward underneath. So the layered psyop makes sure Israelis, Iranians, Americans, and Gulf publics all feel like they're either being protected, avenged, redeemed, or compensated, while the same small circle of transnational actors quietly standardizes the region's energy, finance, and security architecture in their favor. In this analysis, Israel is not the apex power, but rather a subordinate node within a larger transnational network of military and financial elites. And public talk of divorce between Washington and Tel Aviv is part of managing perception as the capital structure in the region is radically re-engineered.